Since we're recording now, all right, I'm going to call the meeting to order. It's 5:04, January 19th, and this is the City Council work session meeting for Minnetrista. So we're going to start over with a roll call. I'm Lisa Whalen, I'm the mayor. Council members present are Ann McGregor.
Yes.
Okay, Kathleen Refkin.
Here.
And Pam Mortensen.
Here.
John Chumperlin.
Here.
And then staff, we have our city administrator, Mike Baroni.
I am here.
Public Works Superintendent, Gary Peters.
I am here.
Chief of Police, Paul Falls.
Here.
Community Development Director, David Abel.
Here.
Finance Director, Brian Grimm.
Here.
And Director of Administration, Ali Palfos.
Here.
And City Clerk, Chris Lindquist.
I am here.
And our city engineer with WSB is Allison Fauski.
I'm here.
And I don't think we have our attorney on for the work session. Is that correct, Mike?
That is correct, Mayor. No attorney for this meeting.
All right, thank you. I think they'll join, he will join us for our regular meeting. So with that, we have 2 items on our agenda. I did ask, you'll notice we have a little earlier start time than usual. We have 2 discussion items, and I thought they might take more than, half hour or 40 minutes each. So I asked staff to make it a 5 o'clock meeting. I hope you're all okay with that. With that, we're going to be talking about the assessment methodology for the Sunnyfield Road project, and we're also going to be talking about the broadband discussion. We'll start out with assessment methodology. Let's see, who wants to take that, Allison or Brian?
Yep.
Which one?
Madam Mayor, I can certainly introduce the topic. Included in your packet is a summary of the Sunnyfield Road assessment map. As the council may recall at the previous meeting, we provided a project scope that does not include turn lanes. And so the estimated project cost for this road at this time for the road improvements is $490,700. The city's assessment methodology is to assess 50% of the improvements to the benefiting properties adjacent to the project. In this instance, we're presented with a unique situation where all of the properties, which are shown in blue on the memo in the council packet, are owned by the school district. And so given this unique circumstance where the estimated assessments given by applying that 50% assessment methodology would equate to a $245,350 estimated assessment based on the feasibility estimates that were included in the report. So given that, staff just felt it was a good opportunity to bring this to council for a discussion to see if there was an alternate methodology that the council would like to entertain for this project. So with that, if there's any information that I can provide to the council at this time, I'd be happy to do so.
Thank you, Ms. Fauski. Brian, I maybe kind of for, you could enlighten us a little bit. So for the Highland Road project, what was assessed? Do you recall that was back in 2012, I think it was, 2011, 2012. Was that like around $11,000 per parcel?
That's correct. For Highland Road, it was $11,000 for parcels. There was very few parcels along that route, but that is the correct full amount. There was a couple other offshoot numbers, but 11,000 was the main assessment amount.
Okay, and then for the Game Farm Road project that we did, that was also an MSA road, we assessed $12,500, I believe, and then of course there was additional for those that are on cul-de-sacs, but the main road was $12,500, correct?
You were close. It was 13,000, I believe.
Okay, and then on the Halstead project that we just recently completed, that amount was $14,500. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, it was it was a number right around there. That's correct. It was a little under 15,000, like 14,000 and some change.
Okay, thank you. All right. The reason I bring that is because um, I know that in the past, and also on the Halsted project, we had two large parcels with Minnehaha Creek Watershed District, and they were also assessed the same amount, the 14.5 or the 14.8, maybe it's 14,800, whatever, right around that amount. And so I think we need to keep that in the back of our minds. The other thing I wanted to point out to council, particularly for the two new council members, Kathleen and Ann, for those projects, because they were very large parcels and there weren't as many people to divide the assessment over, they were assessed about 20% of the project. So the city councils deviated from the 50% assessment. So with that, I'd also like the council, just a couple of thoughts here, and then I'll be quiet. So one of the things last fall, some of you might recall, there was an individual in the community that asked the city if they would consider contributing some of our COVID relief dollars to the school district, and the council felt that that wasn't needed, or that we didn't have to do it at that time, which was correct. Mound gave around 500,000, Orono gave 100,000. And at the time, the school district said that they were okay through the end of the year, that they didn't need any more funding at that time. However, I do know that, so Minnetrista opted to not give any funding to the school at that time. However, I do know because of the ongoing COVID situation, the school has continued to have ongoing additional costs, and not only additional costs, but they also have a rather significant or a loss of revenue. So it's compounded. So I just want us to keep that in mind when we're thinking about this. I think if I were to make a recommendation, I think we should think of something much less than the 50%. In my opinion, I would rather have the school district use their funds to put to our kids, either in educational or in extracurricular activities, something that will benefit our kids. Now, I don't have kids in the school district right now, so when I say our kids, I mean our community, our kids in our community. We didn't, like I said, we didn't give them any relief funds, and there was also another reason I forgot to mention. We have 3 different school districts in our that service Minnetrista residents. And we felt at the time too, one of the reasons I didn't vote for it, and I believe some of the others were on board with this as well, we would have set a precedent for that. And with that, we thought, you know, we don't want to be doling out money to school districts just kind of willy-nilly. But this is a little different. We don't have any other school district within our boundaries that has a road that needs to be improved. So it's a little bit different than that. And the other thing I also want to point out is that these are municipal state aid dollars that we get every year from the state. And we can only use those dollars for municipal state aid roads. So we are limited on what we can spend those dollars on. So with that, I'm going to be quiet and hand it over to other council members, and we can have more of a discussion. Who would like to go first?
This is John T. I have a question of Mr. Grimm or Ms. Falsky. On the accounting side of it, these are MSA dollars. Do we, I think this came up probably last summer, Mr. Mulder probably asked the accounting on it. Do we, after we agree on assessed value, do we then in turn, when the construction is done, only report the dollars that are not assessed to the state, or do we still charge or account to the state for the total of, say, 490,000? That's the first question. Second question, then if we report the whole amount and in turn and we assess, obviously we're getting that part of the money back into our coffers. I assume that don't go back to the state. I assume it just goes into our general road fund? So I guess whoever wants to answer the question.
Maybe Ms. Falsky, you could answer that.
Yes, that's a great question, Councilmember Chamberlain. So the state aid projects, in order to get state aid reimbursement, we simply report what components of the project are eligible for state aid funding. To my knowledge, the state does not look at alternate funding sources on how the city pays for that, be it from assessments or other bonds or what have you. So I'm not aware of that being a restriction on how much you get reimbursed from state aid.
So then the answer was
Yeah.
we'd report, if these numbers were accurate, we'd report 490,000, correct?
It would be in that neighborhood. If I remember correctly, the 490 would all be state aid eligible funding, because we have some components of the project that are not eligible, and that's the Langwood Mill and Overlay. So that would be separate from that.
Okay. And Mr. Grimm, when we do the assessments and we get back whatever we agree on, does that then go I know it's spread out over whatever period of time, does that money just go back into the road fund?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so then as always, money came back in, whether in this case the property owners, the school, or residents, if they prepay all at once, it goes in there. Otherwise, it would go with as we get our property tax collection, or the special assessments collected with the annual property taxes each year. So those would, yeah, then in turn go back into that the road fund we have. Correct.
Okay, thank you. From that perspective, obviously for me, from an accounting standpoint, I was not comfortable with the 50 just in the first place, but I'm obviously much more comfortable with whatever we might arrive at, unless we really cut this down to nothing, because they are obviously getting a benefit here, and it's predominantly them that are getting the benefit, because that improved section just runs in front of the school. Basically, once you get past school property, it's the crushed rock. So I'll be open to whatever the rest of the council brings up as to reaching a number, but being we get the full dollars back from the MSA fund, I'm much more agreeable to a new number.
Okay, thank you, John. Anybody else who wants to be next? Kathleen?
Sure. I guess my view on it, the school has known about this project. They're aware of it. That's why it was postponed, I believe, last time, correct? When we talked about it, when you guys talked about it last year, is because the school didn't have time to budget for it. Is that correct?
No, actually, it was postponed just because we didn't have enough time, I think, to talk with them and to figure out what exactly they wanted.
Okay. I mean, I don't think we should view the school paying their 50% any different than we view the other road projects having to pay their 50%. As John said, the road is primarily used for the school. That's who's benefiting from it. And personally, if I didn't have kids in the school, if you're older and you're paying money into the road fund, but the school's not getting assessed 50%, but you're getting assessed 50% for your street, I would be upset. I think we need to view the school just like we would anyone else, like the Minneapolis Avenue project. If we're billing them 50%, why does the school get a discount?
Okay, well, one of the, like I said, the Minneapolis project, we're looking at using property tax dollars for. That would be money that we levy against the properties in Minnetrista. The Sunnyfield Road project, we're using MSA dollars. And the other
Right.
thing, right,
Yeah.
and then, go ahead.
But if I'm understanding this correctly, we get a general fund for MSA dollars. So if we don't use all of it on this road, we can use it for other MSA roads that need to be improved, correct?
Yes, we can do that, absolutely, yep.
So if we have a way to assess some of it back to the school, so we have additional money to use on other roads, that would benefit more residents of Minnetrista, especially since you pointed out, not just Minnetrista residents use this road because there's 3 other, areas pulling into the high school.
Right. And that's why I think that's kind of what the MSA dollars are set up for, to kind of pay for those roads that are used not solely by, they're connector roads basically. And you identify which roads are MSA roads, and Sunnyfield has been designated one of our MSA roads because it connects 110 to 26, basically.
Mayor Whalen, I've got a question. MUSA is, the money is kind of replenished every year, correct?
Yes, we used to get,
Okay.
we got 348,000 previously, but now this year it's been reduced a little bit, and I could be off by a little bit, but I think it's around 316,000.
So at the end of this year, we will get that, give or take a few, $316,000 again for a road that we would maybe choose for the 2022 projects, right?
Correct. Yeah, every year you get that and you can spend that. And the other thing to note is that with our MSA dollars, we can only accumulate up to 1.6 million. And then after that, we're dinged, if you will, if we don't spend it. And so that's kind of what happened is we were up against that time frame. And so last year we did the mill and overlay on Halsted in order to not lose any of those dollars. And we're nowhere near that 1.6 million right now. We only have, I think with this, we'll have a little over 528,000. I don't know the number exactly, at the end of this year to use.
Does the school get any funding from the state for roads?
No.
Okay.
And I'll just, Ann, I'm sorry. Let me, Allison, are you aware that they would get, I'm not aware that they do, but Allison, are you aware if they get any funding for roads?
Not that I'm aware of, Madam Mayor. I certainly don't know where the school's funding sources are from.
Okay, I haven't heard that they get any, Ann, so I'm going to, and I've spoken with the superintendent, asking him how they would pay for this, and it would have to come, and I've been told it would have to come out of their general fund budget. And so something, and as you know, school districts, they can't just raise their levy, they have to go out and ask for a referendum. They have to go out for a levy referendum. So they can't just raise their budget. That's how I understand schools. So it would have to somehow come out of their general tax, their general fund.
Okay, this is Ann. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. 50% is 245,000. And you want to go as low as 20%?
That was my recommendation because that's what we've done for Game Farm, Halsted, and also Highland. So kind of in keeping with that, that's what I was thinking. I mean, I don't know that the other thing, Ann and Kathleen, I'm not sure if you're aware of, but what we have to do is we have to look at the assessments and say, okay, do they gain that amount of benefit? And it's sometimes hard to tell, but you have to ask yourself, will the school gain a $245,000 assessment? That's the other thing to ask.
Okay, okay, the taxpayer, the MSA dollars still come from taxpayers, right?
Comes from gas tax from the entire state.
Oh, okay.
So whenever
And
you buy a gallon of gas, there's a tax on that gallon that goes to MnDOT, and then MnDOT has X number of dollars in their account from the gas tax dollars, and then they divide that up, and there's a formula that they use, and based on the amount of roads miles, MSA road miles that you have, this is making it very simplified. That's how they derive at how much money we get per year.
Okay, and if we gave them this break, if we didn't give them the break, we'd have more money to put into more road projects for this year, but we don't have any more road projects scheduled than we know about, right?
Correct. We wouldn't get the money necessarily even this year. Um, Again, it's maybe maybe I can have Allison explain the timing on the assessment. They would have an option of paying the assessment off by, I believe it's November 15th. So if they wanted to pay the whole amount, whatever the assessment is, without any um, interest on it, that would be, I believe, and I'll let Allison jump in here real quick. And then if they don't, and they want to do it on an annual basis, they could spread it out over a 20-year period. That's usually what we've offered people. Allison, can you verify that?
Madam Mayor, that's correct. So after the council adopts an assessment rule, there's a period that the council can set for interest-free when payment is made in full on the assessment up until November. And the November timeframe is set because Brian, Director Grimm and his group need to send off assessments to the county to have it certified to taxes, and there's some time that's necessary in order for the county to do that. So if it's not paid in full by November, then it gets certified to taxes and then as an annual payment made to the city. Now, throughout that time frame, as Minnetrista typically does a 20-year time frame, if a property does have an opportunity to pay it off in full within that 20 years, they can certainly do so. They're not held to making an annual payment for 20 years. They can pay it off, but we typically see folks that do opt to get the assessment and annual payments. They will typically just make those annual payments for 20 years.
Okay.
Okay, so is the school's budget bigger or smaller than Minnetrista's?
Oh, good question. I don't know the answer to that.
I'm pretty sure in most years, sorry to jump in. I think the school's budget most years, they're just a larger entity than us and stuff. I think their budget is usually larger than ours, but it can obviously ebb and flow depending on infrastructure projects and what each entity's got going on.
Okay, hey, what I'm trying to get to is if our policy is 50%, and is it that we feel that we kind of owe them because we didn't give them any of the care funds? Why are we really deviating off of the 50%?
Well, so here's why. Because a number of things. No, not because we didn't give them CARES Act dollars, not necessarily. But I guess in a spirit of collaboration and working together, that's one thing. But also because of what we've done in the past. Again, citing Game Farm, Halstead, and Highland, we deviated from the 50% because the assessments would have been significantly higher, and we felt that it would have been hard to substantiate the benefit in those higher amounts. And again, this is going back to 2008. I believe for Game Farm, the assessments would have been somewhere around, I could be wrong, in the $20,000 range. And we just felt that, so what happens is if you assess too high an amount, that is, it exceeds the value, if you will, to the property, they can take it to court and they can dispute it. Okay, so we need to be careful about that. And that might be one reason why we should take a look at it and say, is the 245,000, is that really a value that they will see?
Okay, and so are you talking 20% in the land of negotiation, and you'd like us to say something like 35 or 40, or where did you why?
Well, I think that's what is up for discussion here tonight. Is the
Okay.
council comfortable doing the 20% as we've done with the others? Do you want to do more? Do you want to do less? That's part of or do you want to stick to the 50? And so maybe to put it in perspective, if you do the full 50 and they should decide to do a 20-year repayment plan, even with an interest on top of it, it would probably be somewhere in the vicinity of around 12 to 13,000 a year is what we would get back. So it's not like we would get 245. Again, we don't know how they.
That's an important point. That's good. Okay, all right, good.
Brian, is that? Go ahead, Dan.
No, let Brian talk.
Yeah, yeah, Madam Mayor and Council, I was just going to jump in just for maybe a couple points of clarification. So yeah, I think on the MSA roads, we have in the past, as the mayor and others have mentioned, deviated, whether it was Halstead, I think we ended up at a true percentage in the low 20%. Game Farm, I believe, once we worked through that one, was actually closer to about 30%. So, I mean, I guess I would probably be, if you're going to look at those as benchmarks, I would probably say in the 20-ish to 30, I would say a third to a fourth is maybe something more to look at least for a starting point versus maybe going all the way down to 20. You don't want to maybe, not to say, you don't want to negotiate against yourself sometimes and start too low a bar. And I know the school it's a good partner and stuff, but it has been brought up earlier that there's other school districts within the city, and you just want to make sure you have something to point to, and you're not setting maybe a precedent that others point to that can come back to sort of bite the city, in future negotiations.
Okay, so I can go with 40.
And those
This
other
is Pam.
projects,
Oh, go ahead. Is that Kathleen?
yeah, sorry. Those other projects, those were mainly residential, right? Highland, Game Farm, Halstead, those were all residential properties, not, businesses, or obviously not the school district.
On Halstead, there were 2 large parcels that belonged to the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District. So there were none. And then also on Game Farm, there were a couple of camps, I think, that were assessed as well. I think one Camp Christmas Tree or something like that. So generally, you're correct. Generally, they were more of the parcels were residential. Yes.
Yeah, I'm with that in mind, I'm fine with 40%. I don't think we should go much lower, because as a resident, I mean, I would be mad if I get assessed 50% and the school district's only getting assessed 20, or, like Brian said, like, you don't want to set a precedent that the school district gets treated differently than the residents do.
Pam, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I think 20% might be a little bit low as well. I'd be more game into looking at a 40% or 35, 40%. Even I don't have kids in the school district either in the school. However, I do use that road. I go there for entertainment, some of the sporting events, things like that. So a lot of people do use that road, even in spite of not having children there. So, and I do believe in investing in the kids anyway, but I think 20 is a little too low. I would be a little bit more apt to go up a little bit, but I think I'd be in favor of supporting this.
Something less than 50.
Yes.
Okay, so we have to kind of come to some kind of conclusion, I think. So we've heard 40%, and we've heard something less than 50. John, where are you at?
Let me throw one more wrinkle in here, and maybe it's not something that can be done fiduciary-wise. Have we ever waived interest on assessments?
Brian, you can weigh in. I don't think we have. Brian?
Yeah, Councilmember Schemperle and the rest of the council, I am not aware of any situation where we've really deviated from our assessment policy as far as interest, or for sure gone all the way to waive interest. Obviously that is an idea to potentially consider, but yeah, as far as precedent, I don't think we've ever done that before.
And our interest right now, what does that run typically? What we would be assessing, is that a couple percent?
Yeah, what we usually do is we do 2% over our debt issuance rate. And what we do in this case, seeing we're not issuing debt, is we would look at, we'd work with our financial advisor, Ellers, to say, if we were going out for a 20-year bond, what would that be right now? Would it be 2.5%, 3%, or 2%, or 1.5? So it would be pretty low, depending if we went 15 or 20 years or whatever we worked with the school district. So, and yeah, I guess there has been, there could be flexibility as far as, not going the full 2% above our debt rate, and maybe you go 1% or something different, or not even go above it. But there'd be things that you could look at, I guess, as far as if you wanted to work with interest rate.
Okay, thanks. That was just a general question. It's just from the point of, if we couldn't agree on a reduction in the 50% rate, then that could be another way of at least reducing some of the debt if they were not going to pay it out immediately, which I would suspect they would not. But back to Mayor Whalen's question, I would like something less than 50, but I certainly would not be comfortable going down to what had been done in the past, which I wasn't aware of when we dropped them that low, but that was probably pre my time. So I would agree with probably kind of with Kathleen and Ann and Pam, that probably somewhere in the 35 to 40 range. I would certainly be comfortable with 35 or 40.
Okay. Well, we still need to decide whether it's 35 or 40. And again, kind of just to reiterate, I know, Kathleen, you mentioned a couple of times that we shouldn't deviate, but again, when we're talking large parcels, we have deviated. So again, and I have no problem with, if the council wants to go 30 or 35 or 40, but when we did our MSA projects in the past, it's been between, as Brian said, between 25 and 30, maybe 35. And I want to just caution you, because when we do a north arm, that might be our next road that we may do. That too has very large parcels, and those are mostly or many residential properties up there. I would hate to say, okay, we're going to do 50% here, and then tack on a $20,000 or $25,000 assessment for those properties. So we need to be a little bit careful and cautious too. And all I'm saying is, in the past, we've done somewhere between 25 and 35, somewhere in that range for our MSA roads when they've been larger parcels. So with that, I just need to kind of get a feel for the council. Do you want to do, I've heard 35, 40, where do you want to go? How many want to do 35? How many would be comfortable doing 35?
I have one other question, real quick.
Okay.
There's more. I'm sorry, Jen. Real quick question. Is the school getting a second round of COVID relief funds at all that anyone knows of?
I believe there was some in the last bill that was passed, but I'm not 100% positive.
Okay.
And the most likely, the COVID relief funds that they get can't be used to pay off a road assessment. They would have to use them for COVID-related issues. But I think Kathleen's correct. That was you, right, Kathleen?
Yep, that was me.
Okay, so I'm still trying to get used to voices here.
Hey, at least you can hear me this week.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. All right. Yeah, in answer to your question, Pam.
Thank you.
All right. So let's wrap this up. Anybody feel comfortable at 35? Kathleen, would you go 35? Where do you feel comfortable at?
I feel more comfortable with 40, and I know what you said about North Arm, but I think the school district is different than a residential parcel. It's decent. So I'm fine with, I would prefer 40. If I'm the only one, then that's fine, but I would prefer 40.
All right. Pam, where are you at?
I'm going to lean with the 40% as well.
All right. And Ann? I'm sorry, we didn't catch you.
Oh, sorry. I said yes. I go with the 42.
All right, and John?
I can go 40.
All right, I don't know that there's a huge difference between 35 and 40, so we'll go with the 40 then. Staff, do you need any additional direction, or is there anything else you need?
From engineering perspective, Madam Mayor, that what you provided for guidance tonight will be fine. So any future, in the future when we look at assessments, we'll incorporate the 40% assessment methodology.
All right. And Brian, do you need anything?
Well, no, I was going to say, and this is maybe a question more for Mike Baroni and the council in general, is I assume that yeah, obviously the council set the parameters at the 40%, that we should probably start having some further follow-up conversations with the school district sooner rather than later, because I know we want this project to happen in, I think, summer, basically after school is out, and that's going to come up quick. So I assume there's going to have to be quick or correspondence that's timely, that so we can get a good resolution as far as what our plan is with the school district, and just that everything's communicated, that there's no surprises to anyone, I guess.
Okay, all right. I agree. So if my calculations are correct, based on a $490,700 project, we're looking at a 40% would be 196,280 assessment approximately, which would be a $9,800 annual payment plus whatever we decide on interest. Okay. All right, so we will have to have those discussions with the school. And I think we're good on that one. So next we'll move on. This one might take a little longer. So we have broadband and internet service for Minnetrista. Who's going to take this, Ally?
Yeah, I will take this. Thank you, Madam Mayor. At the last meeting on January 4th, the City Council requested that staff provide some information, some updated information on the current internet services to make a plan moving forward into the upcoming years as we near the end of our franchise agreement. So I'm just going to go through all of the information I've provided for you. I will try and keep it summarized as it's a lot. So I'll just kind of go through each point and then we can discuss at the end. So the current status of our franchise agreement, as you know, is up in December 13th of 2023. Mediacom is required to provide us with a 30 to 36 months notice of that expiration. When I wrote this, they had not provided us with that, but we have received that notice. So that is just another update on the franchise agreement. The Mediacom system build out. The franchise agreement included requirements for future build out. Phase 1 and Phase 2 were laid out pretty detailed, and that included the 24 to 27 miles and the estimated around 400 households in Minnetrista. Phase 3, which you could say we're currently in, was to be reviewed by the city, but no construction was required. That doesn't mean Mediacom didn't continue to build out. They just didn't have any build out maps as you saw in Phase 1 and 2. PEG fees. Mediacom collects fees on behalf of the city at the rate of $1.20 per subscriber. In 2013, the city received a $50 grant from Mediacom to be paid back in these PEG fees. And we paid that back late or early 2019. So that grant has been paid off for right around 2 years now, and we are collecting 100% of those PEG fees. Mayor Whalen asked me to update on the DEED broadband grant. The Office of Broadband Development at Minnesota DEED has not announced the application winner, but Mediacom and we remain hopeful. I will obviously keep you updated on those results. Other providers in Minnetrista, as you know, we currently have the 3, Mediacom, Frontier, and Extra Time, depending on residence location. And I can dive more into that later. Some short-term actions that have been discussed briefly. We discussed some sort of compliance review or agreement assessment of the current franchise agreement. And I spoke with some legal counsel seeing what this would entail, and he kind of gave us two options. The first would be more of an audit. So this is a technical or franchise fee audit, and this type of evaluation is typically conducted if there's already suspicion of a non-compliance. Staff doesn't believe that to be the case, but we are not 100% sure. This method would likely take 6+ months and cost up to $15,000. A compliance review would be done more in-house by legal counsel and staff. Staff would do a lot of the work, and legal counsel would determine compliance or not. This method would take several months. There's really no saying. It kind of depends on Viacom's cooperation, and could approach $5,000 plus in legal fees. Communication to residents. Many of the residents are unaware of Mediacom's operation. Same with Frontier and Extra Time. And there's always questions about why we don't have other providers in this city. And I think they just might be misinformed, uninformed. So I think maybe improving some transparency and information for residents on the website and the newsletter to better communicate what we're dealing with here in Minnetrista and why could help inform residents. Obviously, bringing the issue up to the forefront could also create a lot of calls, more inquiries and such. So that's also something to think about. Additional providers in Minnetrista. The franchise currently is not exclusive for internet service. So the city is free to provide information about other providers, reach out to other providers to see if they want to come here. Unfortunately, we all know very few providers are likely to want to build a system out here, but I've listed a few options that were discussed in the past, and I think ultimately they refused, or I know there's been some change of hands in these companies, so we can discuss the options with those as well. And looking long term, we'll need to start thinking about renegotiating the current franchise agreement. That could be keeping it the same, keeping it with Mediacom, but changing terms, or we could ultimately decide to negotiate a new franchise agreement with a different provider. Invite other providers to Minnetrista. The council could decide to invite other internet providers into Minnetrista. I think we'd have to be kind of creative on our approach, and a lot of the areas that other providers like to build out in, they're already built out here because they meet the density requirements. So we might just have to get a little creative, but I guess we're just looking for direction on how to move forward. Give us the marching orders here. I know this is a hot topic, so Mike and I can answer any questions that you guys have.
Thanks, Sally. All right, who wants to start? Who has questions? I'm sure we have none, right?
I do. This is Ann.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So do we know what the other cities around us are doing? And do we by any chance have something where we could have a chart, first of all, get a hold of a copy of their franchise agreements, and have a chart of the cities around us and who they have as franchise agreements?
I do not have that information on hand, but yes, I could definitely obtain that. And you're saying get a chart that has the cities, who they're with, what that franchise entails?
Yes.
Yeah,
And just
that's possible.
I haven't seen the agreement, but Mound and Orono both have Mediacom as well.
I know
and
Independence does too. I'm 99% sure they do too.
And then, but we don't have the agreements, you know, their franchise or their contracts.
Right. But yeah, it would be helpful if you guys would kind of give us directions as to which cities we could do the ones we evaluate, you know, when we do other comparisons on too. So yeah, I can definitely gather that information.
Well, I'll jump in here. So Mayor and Council, as most people know, the genesis of the city of Minnetrista having its exclusive contract with Mediacom in 2013 came about as we mentioned in the staff report about we used to be part of the Lake Minnetonka Cable Commission or Communications Commission. I forget what the first C of the I think it's vacillated over time, but nonetheless, we were part of that group. And then when the contract expired, a number of cities jumped out, including us. I would be really surprised if all the cities that jumped out don't have Mediacom like we do. We could certainly get copies of their agreements. I did talk with Councilmember McGregor a little earlier today about that, so we can certainly do that. And then we can compare terms of our contract with theirs. Maybe we got a good deal, maybe not. I guess that's one reason why we can look at that. But we can also ask legal counsel to provide some information on terms and conditions in other contracts around the metro that they may be aware of that are comparable to Minnetrista.
Now, this is Ann again. I'm not, yeah, and I'm not asking just out of curiosity. I'm asking because in different threads that I'm seeing, that I've seen over the last 7 months, and especially in the last couple of weeks on Nextdoor, I'm under the impression that Waconia has some sort of franchise agreement with CenturyLink, and it would be good to actually know whether there's reliability built into these franchise agreements. Because this agreement that we have here is basically a TV agreement. It's not an internet agreement. And it would be good to renegotiate this contract as soon as possible. I think that it could be in the interest of both parties to do that.
It would be, and in addition to that, I don't know why we wouldn't open it up to other cable companies as well. I mean, would there be any legal reason why we couldn't do that?
Just to jump in a little bit on that, when Allie spoke with Bob Vose from Kennedy and Graven, one of the things that he pointed out that, you know, the franchise that we have is not exclusive by its terms, just for that we can't, you know, seek other companies from participating. But if you recall, 3 council members that were on council in 2020 that are still on council today, we had Mr. Vose here to talk about this topic. One of the things he mentioned is there's 3 silos. There's telephone, there's internet, and there's cable TV. And the only silo that the city has any sort of control over is the cable TV. So he mentioned to us in the email that he sent us that with respect to cable service, however, there's a strict statutory process for issuing a franchise. So the cable TV has some caveats, law about it that we have to consider, but whether it's a telephone company or a broadband company competing with Mediacom for internet service, that's up to us to decide.
So they can't compete for TV, but they could compete for broadband.
Correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, like I said, we could. I mean, Mediacom doesn't have to be our cable service provider either at the end of this contract, but there are some, as Mr. Vose stated, strict statutory processes that have to be followed in order to deal with that piece of it. So we could renegotiate a new contract at the end of 2023 for cable if everybody's happy with Mediacom as the cable provider. But, you know, however we address this is the way I'm reading it, and however we address the franchise or the broadband issue is kind of up to us. So.
Okay.
I don't know if that makes sense or not, but, you know, because as Bob mentioned when he talked to the council last year, you know, these companies are all intermingled, unlike when the law was written many years ago. So you have companies like Mediacom that started out as a cable thing and now they're into broadband, and you've got Verizon that was in telephone, and now they're into broadband. You know, everybody's dabbling into all the others. So he told, I think he referenced double play or triple play, and it's just which of the three silos, how many you're competing in the marketplace at. So.
All right. All right. Some other, anybody else? Ann, do you have other questions?
Yeah, well, I can keep going. Basically, yeah, it's my goal
Yeah.
to have the council take a stand, and it doesn't have to be tonight, but take a stand as to what they want to be responsible for in terms of the build out for internet service, because it is becoming a utility. It is really difficult to be in this world today without internet service, and that service needs to be reliable, and it's not. And again, rather than beat up on Mediacom, because I've worked in enough companies that the computer guy always said he was the bad guy, and because everybody blames the computer person. So everybody's blaming Mediacom because they're the main people. And I'm not sure anybody in any city is happy with anything. But
yeah.
But I would like it for us, and I'm going to make a very strong statement here that is very open to edit, but I would like us to take a stand that every man, woman, and child in Minnetrista needs or deserves a certain level, to be defined, of internet service. Reliable internet service.
Yeah. And I think the question isn't whether they deserve it, because I do believe you're correct. Everybody deserves it. I think the question or the bigger question is, how do we provide it? And what is the city's responsibility in providing it? And how much does the city spend to provide it? And those are the questions I think that are more relevant, because I agree, everybody needs it today, especially. It's not a matter of, do you need it or not? I think everybody needs it. So my thought was, is there some way? So I guess two things. We briefly touched on it. Can we, or is it a possibility to entice another company to come in and do broadband only? Number one. And number two, could the city invest in, I'm just going to throw this out there. I'm not saying this is the ultimate solution, but just as a discussion item, could the city invest in, let's say, some towers and then recoup their costs by charging companies to put their antennas on these towers in order to provide better internet service to more people? Is that something the city would be interested, or the council would be interested in looking at least exploring it? I've heard from some people that say it's not the city's responsibility to use tax dollars to provide internet because it's a utility. It's like gas and it's like electric, and the city shouldn't be in that business. Well, that's the question. Should we or shouldn't we? So those are some things I think we should discuss. Maybe at least get a start on those discussions tonight. John, I'll go to you.
Well, I don't have an answer, and although I spent quite a lot of time trying to study on this, obviously those of us that are on Frontier know that that's certainly not the answer. I don't know what the minimum requirements are. Maybe, Ms. McGregor, for the school issues that we have now with downloading video. I mean, if I had to have a computer here with the mic and the camera on it, with the return I get on Frontier, it would never work. So I know there's certain minimum requirements. I don't know what those are. trying to entice another company to come in might be the answer, especially if it's only broadband. But then is it cable or is it fiber optic? Fiber optic certainly would be the better, much more resilient and works better for that environment, but that's expensive as well. I also tend to agree that I don't think the city wants to get into the business of running the internet. Certainly we have the cable fund that has dollars in it. I don't know what the current balance is, and that's the money that's accumulating off of the monthly fees from Mediacom. And I see that according to Allie's letter here, that Mediacom has put in for a grant. Just, I guess, to stop my discussion here, Allie, do we know what the dollar amount was they've asked for?
I do not know the dollar amount. They gave me a list of households and areas. They did not give a dollar amount. I think Dean might assess that dollar amount when they look at the application.
Yeah, because I can reading up on the deed, my understanding was you don't just throw a number out, you have to have a projected cost of expansion or whatever it is that you want to do, and then they'll give you up to 50% of that if you are applicable.
Correct. Yeah. So what I received, I didn't get a copy of the application, just the list of areas that they were applying for.
And Allie, John, quick, Allie, give us, where are the locations? I believe it's over by Oxyoke, isn't it?
Yeah, let me pull it up here. Sorry, I didn't have it up. Give me 1 second.
My understanding was that because they got a previous grant, Mediacom got a previous grant, they brought the internet, I think, all the way up to almost up to the Minnetrista border on 92.
Yeah,
north.
so there's a few properties on 92. Oxyoke Circle is the main portion of the grant. Northfield Drive, County Road 110, Farm Hill Drive and Court, and Circle, Halstead Drive. So there's about 60 to 70 that kind of span across those areas.
Okay.
So back to my original discussion, I would be interested in, we know that probably, I shouldn't say the average citizen, but we know that many of the citizens are not familiar with what the city has or what Mediacom covers or does for them. I would be interested in somehow getting the public input from the public, and I know that opens Pandora's box. There may be questions that can't be answered, or we may get more than we asked for, which I guess is not always bad. But I would be interested in somehow starting this by getting a pulse from the city, whether we do that with some type of a random survey and I know that obviously costs money too, but to get what the people know they have and what they think they need. And what they think they need and what they need is not necessarily the same thing either. So I know I didn't answer anybody's question here. It's just my feelings on how we can go down this road. Is it correct, from my understanding, that the majority, if not all, of the larger housing developments, Hunter's Crest or Turtle Creek, new developments, obviously, they all are plugged into Mediacom? Is that correct?
Correct. The majority of the highly dense areas are already built out by Mediacom. Yep. The issue is with the more rural areas of the city.
Right, so we're talking predominantly, I mean, it's obviously not the drop dead, but the north and northwest part of the city.
Basically, John, you're talking northwest as well and northeast. Pretty much everything north of 151 and also west of 110 in the less developed areas. It's all very underserved. And in some areas, they don't even meet what's called underserved. They're really unserved in some areas because their
Right.
speeds are so bad.
Right. And didn't we have that discussion back earlier this year, as Mr. Barone alluded to, when I think it was back in June, that there was discussion on whether we were underserved or not served, and the kind of the thought was we were underserved, but I thought the point was made by someone that we were not served in that area.
From a meeting I had back in November, I think, or October, they were saying they listed, apparently it has to do with speeds and access and all of that. And because some areas of our city are so poorly served, they're actually considered as not being served. If I don't know that that helps, but that's the information that I've gotten. So like the area in the northeast quadrant of Minnetrista, they're basically not served. They have internet, but it's so poor that they're considered as not being served, which actually would help us in terms of grants. But
Correct.
yeah.
But Mayor and Council, overall, the city as a whole, and I believe that's how DEED would look at this, they would consider Minnetrista underserved.
Yes, that's what I was going to say,
There
Mike.
may be pockets, as you mentioned, where the internet service is really poor, but as a rule, the city as a whole is considered underserved because they look at everything. So we've got some cities in the better, larger developments that are served quite well. And then we have the thing you just mentioned in some of the areas where it's really poor. But as an average or as a whole, we're considered underserved. And that was one of the reasons why maybe one of the reasons why, probably among many, about why we did not receive a grant last time is because we're considered underserved, and a majority of the grants that DEED doles out goes to unserved areas. So they're doing the rising tide lifts all boats, and we're just kind of sitting there flopping around because we're underserved and we don't get any love our way grant dollar wise. So that's kind of why we're hoping that this go around is better. So
Yeah, but even Mike, even this go around, I mean, we're talking what, 70 homes? I mean,
sure.
that's, and
Well,
we need 1,000 homes to be served better. And also,
I
it's
totally agree with you, Mayor
yeah,
and Council, but we'll take anything we can get for free.
sure.
So
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, so yeah. Pam, any
So,
thoughts? Oh, go
yeah,
ahead,
can I
Ann.
jump, let me jump in. From my point of view, the city needs two things. It needs a plan to address the infrastructure build out. And that, in order to get to that point, we need to know, one, what other cities are doing, two, who owns what, where towers could go, what the cost is going to be. We need to actually get a broad view of what we have and what we could get. And that's another reason why I wanted to bring in those other franchise agreements to see what other people are doing. I believe that we need to talk, preferably, well, I was going to say face to face, but probably not with COVID. We need to actually talk to AT&T. We need to talk to Verizon. We need to actually talk to these people. And I'll be happy to jump in and do some of this work. Very happy to do so. And it's going to take more than one work session to even begin to put this plan together.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is. Unfortunately, I know how the wheels of government can work, and they can work rather slowly at times. So maybe one of the things, it's, what should happen is, in order to kind of move something along, because there's so many different wheels here that need to be evaluated and researched and looked at. I really wonder if it wouldn't be a better idea to have a subcommittee of the council and staff to look into some of these things. To have a plan is one thing, but we need information before we can even get to that plan part. And so whether, you know, like you said, Ann, to talk to Verizon, T-Mobile, AT&T, and find out what their plans are. I mean, Verizon came to the city, what was it, about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and told us about their 5G and how they were going to be distributing that. And yet, you know, 3 years later, we still don't have it, you know. So I think we'd have to have some more discussions with them, finding out why aren't they here yet? What is their plan? And I guess my question is, how can the city facilitate this? You know, how can we move the needle? That's my question. And if we can move the needle, what is the cost going to be? And if we decide on know the cost and we decide to invest in that, are we going to recover or recoup costs? Those are all kind of questions I think that need to be answered. And kind of like, how do you get at all of that? So Mike, any thoughts on that?
Mayor and council, you know, what I hope that we could get at from this meeting is to come up with kind of a start to a game plan. It's not going to be the entire game plan because we just don't know what we don't know yet, but we do have some starting points to work from. So I was hoping as we hear council members weigh in on this topic, that at some point in time we could probably go with not the full audit, but more of the review as mentioned in Allie's report. So, you know, if we're going to do a compliance review, I think that's kind of our best bet. We'll probably have to do a lot of legwork here as city staff to evaluate and work with maybe legal counsel, as mentioned in the staff report as well, towards a compliance review. I think to me, that's where we start, trying to figure out what we have now that we've got the letter for the renewal. We actually received it on Sunday of all days. And then start working from there. And then, as the mayor just mentioned, and I talked a little bit about this with Councilmember McGregor today, you know, if there's a subcommittee of the council, we'll keep it kind of small where we have a couple council members and city staff and eventually some legal expertise, whether it's Mr. Vose or somebody else, where we start looking at the agreement and all the other options that are available to us. And then that's what we roll out to the council at work sessions along the way as we keep moving forward. And then we can assess all our options for all this stuff. So that's kind of what I was hoping to get out of this tonight. Lay some information out there on that we're looking at both long-term and short-term needs of the community, and then also what we can do to get all that rolling.
Okay, but I just want to reiterate, Mike, even if we look at the current contract and if we renew with modifications to the contract with Mediacom, I still don't think that is going to address internet or broadband, I'm sorry, for the rural areas of Minnetrista. So I think we almost have to do a two-prong approach, and they have to run parallel with each other. We have to take a look at the contract. We have to, like you said, do an evaluation to see if a compliance evaluation, and then see where we go from there, but also look at in the future, how are we going to write the new contract? But at the same token, I think we have to do a parallel and figure out how we're going to, or what the city can do, and how we can facilitate better internet in our rural areas. Is that okay?
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's the short terms. The short term is, you know, eventually as the city grows, if we kept the exact same contract going forward, you know, number of more areas would start to meet the density requirements and then build out would occur. But the short term, as you just mentioned, is we do have a number of rural areas. And again, that's the more costly areas to provide broadband service to. What else can we do? Whether it's other companies, Metronet, which was Jaguar, whether it's anybody else, Extra Time, whoever it is. I mean, I think there's a lot of ways that we can go after that. And, you know, if you mentioned, you know, where can we put up a monopole or something, you know, I think doing that along with the long term, which is the Mediacom agreement, renegotiating that, potentially bringing in extra other vendors. I think those can parallel track, and I think we can try to do the best we can, both short and long term. So.
Okay, all right.
This is Ann again, and I want to throw one more thing in there. Before June, I didn't know the city was involved at all. And then when I found out the city was involved, I literally went into a rage. I was really, really angry because I felt that it was the city that was putting up the barriers and keeping us from having good internet. And then I did learn that that wasn't true, and that it's circumstances. It's a lot of different variables, but there is a PR aspect for the residents of Minnetrista that needs to be handled, and we need to tell them, preferably now, what it is their options are and what they can do now versus what we want to put into a plan going forward. Because I'm telling you, when I was door knocking, people came running out of their houses to either say they wanted to be on a committee or they needed help. I mean, it was unbelievable. So there is a certain amount of urgency to this.
Well, in terms of PR or information, certainly, we have things on our website, number one, but maybe we can do a better job on that. We can certainly put it in our newsletters. We can, again, put more information out there on our website. And those are all things we can do, short of, if there's other ideas. I think we're all ears.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, the information on the website is very minor. As I've been working on website updates, I've been looking at that site and realizing if I was a resident, this isn't the information I want to be provided. So I think improving the website, including it in the newsletter, just kind of giving a background of what we're dealing with and why your internet is subpar. I think that would definitely help.
Okay. All right. Any other thoughts, questions?
This is Pam. I do agree with Ann. I think it's really important that we communicate that, because she is right that when people are under the illusion that it is the city that is dragging our feet on this, and people do need to be aware that we are working on things, but there are things that we have to to gather, and a lot of people, a lot of cities are like us with our size. So this is common. One thing is COVID definitely over the last year has changed the industry, and I'd be very interested to hear. Even over the last year, I'm guessing a lot of these companies have different business plans, because there is a big demand to increase a lot of coverage throughout not just state of Minnesota, but around the world, country. So, I think maybe the meetings we've had, there may be some new ideas and plans out there from these different resources, because there is such a demand for it right now. And I even think Mediacom, what are their business plans right now? Maybe it's something that we've got service with them right now, by using what they have planned going forward, it might work for us. So it'd be interesting to see what the companies are doing, knowing what the demand is of today.
Okay. John and Kathleen?
This is John. I have a question, Mr. Gregor. When you were doing your door knocking, was the concern, the displeasure with broadband in all areas of the city, or predominantly in the semi-rural?
Hunter's Crest is very, very unhappy.
Okay.
To my knowledge, Kathleen has to weigh on Woodland Cove, but to my knowledge, Woodland Cove is good. The rural areas like 92 North are you already know it. It's very underserved. North is underserved. One group off of Game Farm literally has been offered by somebody at the end of their street in Orono to bring in an $8,000 cable that they will all chip in on, which is why I'm asking for us to take some sort of PR move and a stand, because I dismissed that whole 8,000 thing until I was talking at the orientation to David Abel and then to Allie and then to Mike, and all of a sudden, because I was saying that I've lost thousands and thousands of dollars, what has to do with work, over this. Quite frankly, 8,000 divided up by a bunch of people isn't that bad in light of how much money has been lost. So when you start to get into that, we have to actually figure that out. And so I'm going to tell you that it's north of, well, okay, there are two things. There's the build out of the infrastructure, and then there's reliability, because even the people who have it, it's not real reliable.
Right. I've heard too, Mediacom is not very reliable, and even if you have Frontier, it's even worse. So yeah,
Right.
it's
Right.
it's not only do you have it, but it's how reliable it is. But that's why, John, what I was here, basically, like I said before, everything in the northeast and even north and northwest quadrant of Minnetrista is basically unserved or very underserved. And your part in that area too, I don't know what kind, do you have cable? Do you have Mediacom in your area?
You asking me?
Yeah, John.
This is Frontier.
Okay, so
I pegged it the other day, and I pegged it from time to time, and my download is 4.
okay.
My upload is less than 1. So yeah, it's never, at least it's been reliable if one wants to put it that way. That it's hardly ever out, but then it's hardly either.
Yeah, right.
So for rural, for me, I think it's going to have to be wireless. I still don't, even though maybe these companies' perspectives have changed, I just don't think that a company of any size that point can count that they're going to be around in the future and not be here today and gone tomorrow. I just don't see them running wires in the ground, cable in the ground in the rural area.
It's expensive, that's for sure. And it's yeah. Kathleen, did you want to weigh in at all?
You guys hear me?
Yep. Well, sort of.
Allie, I don't know. We have contacts for the other companies.
Kathleen, I can hardly hear you.
I can barely hear you, Kathleen, but I did hear your question. I don't have contact at my fingertips, but it wouldn't take long to get them.
Okay, can you hear me better now?
A little
It's
bit.
better. It's like your microphone is a bit turned down.
Okay. I don't know what happened. My question is, if we have contacts, or you can get them for these other companies like MetroNet and CenturyLink, can we reach out to them and find out what they need from us to expand, to put in the towers, or like just find out what they need, and then we can address whether or not the city provides it, or they'll see the benefit on how many people are in the town, and that's my question.
Yeah, yep. If that's the council's desire, I can definitely reach out to, I've listed, 5 companies here.
Yeah.
And if they have any interest. I think the last time some of these countries were reached out to was 2018, I want to say. So it's definitely possible. And yeah, if that's the council's direction, I'm happy to do that.
And then I was also wondering if we renegotiate with MediaCom on the cable contract, I'm assuming we could put in there like that we want them to run lines to the rural areas, and I don't know whether it's we do what we did last time with the PEG fees to make it kind of worth their while to go into these underserved areas, if that's something we could do.
Yeah, so the terms of build out could definitely be renegotiated. I don't know what MediaCom's threshold is. I mean, at some point they have to make profit, and right now they don't see it anything below 15 homes in a square mile making profit. But those terms could definitely be renegotiated. What they could be, I have no idea. But if there's a gap to be filled, if it costs a certain amount of money and they can only fund 40% of it and we fund the rest, or some sort of idea like that, could be negotiated. I think, could really be negotiated, I imagine.
Yeah. And then Brian, this is probably a question for you. How much do we get on those PEG fees?
As far as quarterly, we get about like $13,000 a quarter, so it's a little over 50,000 for annually is what we get for the revenue for from MediaCom for the year.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, so I guess my direction would be, have Allie get contacts, reach out to these other providers, find out what they need, and then we decide how much the city wants to do with it.
Yeah, if they're even interested, basically you need them to come in and lay fiber optics is what we need them to do. And that's the thing with MediaCom. Right now, they're saying unless you have 15 homes within a certain mile radius, not radius, but it's also it's more complicated than that. But they don't want to extend the fiber optics. Well, if that's the case, what can we? Are they going to change their mind for this next go around? I don't know. But we could look at, this was another thought I had, is using at least some of our PEG fees. I don't know if this is legal or not, but can we use some of our PEG fees to actually pay for, help, if you will, MediaCom extend their fiber optics? Is that something we can do with those PEG fees, or do we have to use it specifically for educational purposes? Do you know, Brian or Allie?
Brian might be one. I do not know, but I could probably look it up here pretty quick if Brian does.
Go ahead, Brian.
Go ahead, Mike. Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know offhand myself as far as how strong those constraints are, what flexibility we have with the PEG fees. I think it would be best to look into it versus me making an off the cuff comment.
Okay, yeah.
I would agree with that, what Brian said. And the other thing is that, as Mr. Vose mentioned to us last year, we already have a contract with MediaCom, and they get paid a certain amount of money. The PEG fees come back to us, but we're, obviously with this contract, it requires some sort of financial commitment. What you don't want to do is give them more money to do what they're already supposed to be doing. So,
Yeah, no, exactly.
we'll always obviously have to investigate this and figure out how those PEG fees could be used or not used, and then go from there. So,
Okay. So let me kind of summarize this if I can, and then all of you jump in and add. One, we need to do maybe more PR, as Ann had said, a little bit better information to our residents. Number two, check and see what other broadband companies there are that would or might be interested in actually providing broadband service to Minnetrista, whether it's a cable company or whether it's wireless company, whatever. So we want to find out what options could potentially be available, and then also find out what we can use the PEG fees for, and what else? Anybody else? What else were we?
Yeah, this is Ann. Basically, we want to get franchise agreements where possible at the surrounding cities, and the cities were listed actually in here, and I'd be happy to find it again.
Yeah.
So, okay, so we need to get the franchise agreements from other places to see what they're doing.
Okay. Okay.
Allie,
That's hard.
Allie, do you have contacts for T-Mobile and Verizon and AT&T too to see what they need from us? Like if they need more towers or stuff to do the 5G? Do you have
Um,
contacts for them?
Same answer as my other one. I do not directly at my fingertips, but it wouldn't be a problem getting them.
Yeah, so okay, perfect. So I would add those to the ones that we reach out to then, just so we have a full picture of anyone who could provide internet slash broadband slash 5G to Minnetrista.
Okay.
Thanks.
And then with that, because for instance, I know there's one company, Extra Time, that could provide broadband, but I guess, they would need a tower or they would need, I guess my question, and I know we've met with them and talked to them, this was a while ago, we should lay out exactly what they would need from the city in order to make that happen. Same with AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon, all of those companies. What would they need the city to provide in order for them to be able to provide the broadband?
And are we talking broadband for all, broadband for those who are on Frontier? Are we talking the city as a whole we want to be served by Extra Time? I mean, because, what are,
I don't think
I
Extra
can
Time.
ask, well, how many households are you looking to be served? And then they're going to go right towards the woodland coves, the highly dense, and we're going to say, well, no, we really need it in the rural. I imagine that's how the conversation will go. And then they'll probably estimate how much it costs to build that out. I would
I would
imagine.
focus on the rural areas. I mean, Woodland Cove, we have Frontier, we have Mediacom. People may not be happy, but at least we have service. So when you're talking to them to find out what they need, I would look at the rural areas more.
Okay.
I think with when we look at franchise agreements and we look at renewing, if you will, when we look at it with Mediacom, I think we could look at other broadband companies or cable companies, see what they would have to offer. Um, Having said that, Ann mentioned before, and I agree with this, I don't think that there's a company out there that anybody is super happy with. No matter who you get, you may not be happy with them, but maybe we can get two companies. I don't know if that's even an option. I guess I'd like to at least find out, is that an option to get another um, Xfinity or whatever to come in and provide broadband to Minnetrista, regardless of where? Is that even an option? Um, I guess I'd like to find out what our options are.
Okay. Here, let me just run through what I have here. So I'm making sure you're giving me, or I'm getting the direction I need. So you want me to reach out to the other providers included in the staff report, including cell providers, Extra Time, those sorts of companies. What can the PIG fees be used for? Franchise agreements from other cities and what the terms of those are, and communications to resident via the website, newsletter, those sorts of things. Am I missing anything?
Yeah, one thing. And basically, what Mike was talking about with the compliance review, when I first read it, I kind of dismissed it because I didn't think it was really that necessary. But when Mike and I talked this morning, I understand why it's important. It would be important. It's not so much a compliance review, but that's a good term for it in order to get familiar with the terms before renegotiating this agreement. So I would go for the compliance review too.
Mhm. Well, and it would also be good to find out how compliant are they. I
Right.
mean, it would, right? Yeah.
Right.
So the council is giving us direction to move forward with the compliance review, which includes legal counsel and staff time.
Yeah, I think just to jump in there, Allie, We'll start that. Obviously, we're not going to spend $1 until the council's okay with what we bring back as a game plan for compliance review. So we will start that work and
Okay.
then check in with the council. I mean, I'm not going to just say, hey, they told us we could spend $5,000 because we don't know what it's going to cost exactly yet. That's a ballpark figure. So, but you know, we need to start. So we'll start there.
And then, Mike, with that, whenever we get a ballpark figure, can we also check and see if we can use any of our PEG fees
Yep.
to pay for that?
Agreed.
Okay, all right.
This is
one
Pam. Can we do one other thing? Because this is something we really, I think all of us agree, this is pretty important, very important actually. Can we have a timeline kind of drawn up? What is our goal as far as timeline is getting all of this, you know, kind of moving in what direction?
Maybe what we can do, I might suggest if we can, could we possibly at the beginning of every work session, maybe even, I'm just throwing this out here as an idea, starting a half hour early. In other words, starting at 5 o'clock for every work session and having a half hour, 20-minute update and or discussion regarding internet. So we have it on our calendar every 2 weeks. We get updated. Even if nothing happens or somehow we have it on our calendar so that we continue to move forward with it rather than just saying, and I think your point is made, Pam, rather than just saying, well, get back to us.
I'm going to jump in here. I don't think we're going to have anything for you in 2 weeks. So my suggestion, if that's what the mayor would like to do, is maybe the first meeting of every month, and we can modify it from there. But we'll put on there that, you know, we're going to give an update on where we are with broadband. So I just don't think we can get anything done in 2 weeks. So to be honest with you folks. So,
Could we do it the second work session of every month then? Would that
sure.
work?
Yeah, but now you're 6 weeks out because I'm not, the second work session is, yeah, I'm fine with that if that's what you want to do. Yep.
I think it's 4 weeks, 5, anyhow.
Yeah.
So this,
Yeah.
okay. So with that, then maybe what you could do is determine whether we need to meet at 5 or 5:30 when we have
Sure.
those discussions. Because I know that there's other things coming up on our work sessions, and I don't want to push those off because they're important as well. But I want to make sure that we have this on our radar. So if it's the second work session of every month, we know we're going to get an update. Even if it's just 10 minutes or something,
Right.
the council get an update, and then you can determine whether or not we meet at 5 versus 5:30. Is that
Yeah, that would work. I just think every
Okay.
2 weeks might be pushing it because these are some pretty big, broad brush stroke kind of things, and you know we're going to try to incorporate a lot of stuff. So I think if you give us basically a month's time between each meeting, this will keep us on track. I think 2 weeks might be kind of tough. If we got something really urgent, we'll certainly bring it up, and we won't just wait 2 weeks for nothing. But I think if we want to go with the second meeting of each month, we could certainly provide updates.
Okay. Council, are you on board with that?
Yeah, can we, I mean, we were talking there for a moment about 6 weeks out. Can we at least do some sort of I mean, I don't know how long it takes to put website stuff together, but can we have like some sort of an article or something sent to the Laker or something on the website, just something in the next 2 to 4 weeks?
Yeah, that's definitely doable. I will work on something with Mike for sure for the website. And our first newsletter goes out mid-February. So we'll create an article for there as well. As far as the Laker, I'm not sure, Mike, if you'd want to put something in the Laker. It's not really a press release, but if that's the pleasure of the council, we can do that too. But yes, I can get that done before the 6 weeks for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
One other idea, when we're going to be planning those early meetings, 5 o'clock, would it be, could we post it somewhere that if somebody is interested in listening to that conversation, they could dial in and listen as well?
Yeah, yep. I think it would be a good idea to kind of make a broad statement that the second meeting of every month at 5 o'clock we'll be discussing broadband, so residents can follow along with the progress if they want to. So I can definitely post something on the website, and yeah, yep.
Okay.
And I'll check with some of my colleagues, fellow mayors, to see what they've been doing in their cities, because I know it's an issue not just for Minnetrista, but Independence, Greenfield, Corcoran. They all kind of have the same issues as we do. So I'll check with those mayors and see what they've been doing and bring that back as well. All right. Anything else?
This is Kathleen. I just have one other thing with the compliance review. Can we make sure it's really broken down exactly what we're looking for and how we're going to get answers on it? Just so when it comes to so when you bring the proposal to us, we know exactly what's going to be looked at, what's not going to be looked at, in case there's anything we want to add. Does that make sense, Mike?
It does. And so
Okay.
I think that would be the preferred method in my mind to go after that. So.
Okay. Perfect. Thanks.
Yeah, just spell it out as to what we're going to be doing. All right, sounds good. All right. With that, I think anybody else? 6:40, we could take a little break and come back at 7 o'clock.
There is one other thing, and this might have to go into the meeting, the next meeting, Trista Day date. We were just going to briefly discuss that.
Well, we can
at some point.
We can discuss
I think that
Councilmember Mortensen during the regular council meeting.
Okay.
we'll do that under reports.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So motion. This is Kathleen.
Kathleen made a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
I'll second it.
Okay, I think Ann beat you to it, so Ann seconded that. So all those in favor will signify with aye. I, Lisa Whalen, say yes. Kathleen?
Aye.
And Ann?
Aye.
And Pam?
Aye.
And John?
Aye.
All right, motion passes 5-0. We are adjourned and we'll talk to you all at 7 o'clock. Thank you, and the recording can now stop. Thank you.